Good morning, everybody. So, welcome to today's session. So what we're going to look at today is the origin of the courts of justice, really. So, why am I looking at that? Well, I think it's there's a trilogy of Greek plays called the Oresteia by Aeschylus, a Greek playwright, and I think what gets played out in that play is something that happens a lot today, which is if you think about people like, say, Ricky Gervais saying about if you put a moderate view across on Twitter, everyone you get called Hitler. So that kind of idea of a kind of Twitter mob, like people hounding people down for their views, I think it's the Greek sort of mythical figures called the Furies represent this kind of energy, which is like a kind of a need for revenge, or a need for righteous indignation, that sort of thing, So I just think it's really interesting how the court, the jury came about in the myth, that involved Apollo and Athene, so I'm going to sort of talk about this and maybe try and draw out some modern day lessons from it that'll be helpful for us today. So that's what I'm doing today. Bit of a tall order anyway, but anyway, I'll see what I could do with it. So so if you want to just kind of get into your meditation posture, we'll just begin by a bit of physical warm-up. So just rub your hands together. And then maybe just cradle your forehead in the palms of your hands. And just give your face a bit of a wash with your hands. Give your hands a bit of a squeeze. So, wake your body up a little bit. Circling on your stomach. Okay, so we're going to do a mindfulness breathing practice, and I think particularly today, just focusing on the detail in the breath. So one of the figures in the story today is Apollo. So Apollo is the Greek god associated with the sun, and in a way you could say is associated with awareness, and also harmony. So he kind of carries a kind of lyre, like a harp, I think, and so it's like there's something about sort of trying to be aware, trying to develop awareness that's, I think, is associated with Apollo. And he's often like kind of balanced out in Greek mythology by Dionysius, who's more to do with the passions and intoxication and that sort of thing, you know, sort of god of wine. So it's kind of saying that in creativity you often need both, you know, you need to have this kind of awareness that's like looking down on things and trying to be objective and see what needs to happen, but you also need to have a sort of some soul in all of that, so it's not just a kind of cold objectivity. There's a sort of humanity in it, there's a sort of feeling in it as well. So, you know, Apollo and Dionysius. So maybe bearing that in mind when you're meditating, you know, just a sense of trying to develop awareness, but you're trying to do it in a way which is soulful, you know, which kind of includes your feelings and everything. So settling into your posture. And just let your body sit there. You know, it's reflecting that your body knows how to sit down. It doesn't need any help from your mind to hold it up. So all you need to do is make sure that your spine is balanced. And then you can, if your spine is balanced, then your weight is going down directly into the ground, then your muscles can just feel confident that they can let go. So relaxation is just like unfurling a fist. And then tuning into how you are this morning, how you feel. Do you feel calm, or do you feel a bit rushed? Do you feel bright and alert, or do you feel a bit sluggish? So knowing how you feel, it's good in the meditation to have a little bit of a sense of how you might remedy that. So if you're feeling a bit dull, you might try and follow your breath high up in your body. If you're feeling a bit overexcited, you might try following your breath lower down in your body and focusing more on rhythmic movements in it. So, rhythm helps us to calm down. And then taking your attention onto your breath. And picking up on the detail in your breath. So what's happening in this moment right now and the next moment. Trying to be aware, whether you're being aware or not. So if you know what the detail is in your breath, you know you're being aware. If you don't quite know what the detail is, you're probably not being aware. You're probably just vaguely aware that you're breathing. So we're trying to develop this kind of bright awareness, kind of based in reality. And mindfulness of breathing. Okay, so I look a bit dark in this light. It's like my normal camera's not working. Anyway, so yeah, today's topic is was kind of like justice or something like that, and it's based on a play called trilogy of plays called the Oresteia by Aeschylus, and yeah, so there's some characters here from Greek mythology that I'm going to sort of just talk about first, just so that we know who they are. So we've got this guy here. We've got Apollo, right? He's part of the story. So Apollo is the god associated with the Greek god associated with the sun. Here's another picture of him with a bow, and so according to the ancient Greeks, Apollo was the god of the sun and light and patron god of all arts. Always depicted as a radiant, handsome young man. His most common attributes were the bow and arrow and the ancient musical instrument of cathara or lyre. When people used to call upon him, they were often using the epithet Phoebus, which literally translates to bright. Along with his twin sister Artemis, the goddess of hunting, they are the never aging teens of the Olympians. Apollo is the son of Zeus and Leto, the granddaughter of Uranus, heaven, and Gaia, earth. When Hera realized that Leto was pregnant by her husband, she immediately demanded from all lands of the world to not allow Leto to give birth on them, and then forbid the rest of the gods to help her. The heavily pregnant Leto wandered the world in vain, not being able to find a place to hide from the jealous queen of the gods. So, it's a result of a kind of an affair that Zeus had with somebody other than his wife, Hera. After her many requests, the floating island of Delos took pity on her and allowed her to give birth on its land. By the time Leto set foot on Delos, 4 pillars emerged from the earth to immobilize the island. After 9 days of sheer agony, Aletheia, the goddess of childbirth, came to Leto's assistance, and the twin gods Apollo and Artemis were born. So there you go. So actually, I went to Delos once, and it's just off the coast of Mykonos in Greece, and there's all these temples there. It's very much associated with Apollo, this island, and apparently there was this statue that stood that's just stood there, and it was 60 foot high, made out of stone. And if you ever go in the British Museum, you can see part of the statue. There's like basically a toe and part of a foot, with the toes about this this big. So it's amazing, just the things that the Greeks, the statues that the Greeks built. And I was just looking they did this at Rhodes, of this thing called the Colossus at Rhodes, which was another like 100-foot high statue that straddled the entrance to the harbour. So yeah, I mean, So that's Apollo. So also in the story is this figure. So this is Athene, or Pallas Athene. So this is a statue. It's on top of the Austrian Parliament. So she's got a kind of she's like a warrior goddess, really. She's associated with heroism. So she's got a spear in one hand, and the other hand she's got the winged is it Samathraki Nike Nike trainers. So it's like this winged figure that's a symbol of victory. And I don't know if you can see, but on the kind of golden kind of jersey there she's got, it's like there's a load of snakes at the bottom there. So that'll come out in the story later on. So again, these huge statues in the Acropolis. So Athene is very much associated with Athens, and so in the Acropolis, and the Parthenon, which is the Greek temple on the Acropolis. Apparently, there used to be this seated statue of Athene in gold and ivory that was 38 feet high. Can you imagine it? 38 feet high, by the sculptor Phidias. Okay, so the third set of kind of gods, is are these. These are the Furies. So it's quite interesting. This is a political journal called the Boston Review, and it says the title of this article is "The Weakness of the Furies. Victim anger can be useful to the political struggle, but it can also become excessive and obsessive, deforming the self." So I'm just sort of thinking in terms of people trying to tear down institutions, in this kind of furied frenzy of wanting revenge or something like that, or you feel like your group or your particular things that you're behind are being threatened, so you want to tear down the opposition, tear down society, that sort of thing. That's kind of mood. So it says, according to most mythological accounts, the three Furies, named Alecto, the unceasing, Megara, the jealous, and Tisiphone, the avenger, were literally born of blood. They sprang into being after the Titan, Kronos, castrated his father Uranus. The blood from Uranus's wound fell to the earth, Gaia, and produced the giants, the Furies, or Erinyes is the name for Furies, and the Melii, a kind of nymph. So, born of blood is the literal meaning of Erinyes. So what does this mean then? Well, in a way, that the Furies represent a kind of just an instinctive desire for like justice or something like that. So say for instance, well, in the story what happens is Orestes kills his mother because his mother's killed his father, King Agamemnon. But the Furies come chasing after him, because what they represent is like the principle of like, the things that you wouldn't do, that are kind of almost like taboo, So killing your mother, killing your parents, anything like that, But you could say it was more general than that. It's more kind of about like going against anything that's sort of precious to somebody else, So, for instance, I think, I just remember like in the 1980s when, kind of, we'd had the 60s and the 70s, and it's been this growth of like liberal values, And then in the 1980s, Mrs. Thatcher came along, and in a way, it's just started doing the exact opposite of that, creating a cult of the individual, getting kind of deregulating the city of London so that people could just pursue kind of profit and, without the same sort of regulation that they might have had before. And in a way, the thing that was being sort of dissolved was the sense of community, like the miners' strike, all of that, kind of, Mrs. Thatcher wasn't bothered about, kind of making those real communities, kind of devastating them. Well, I'm sure she was bothered on some level, but it's like, and I think what came out of that for me was I felt furious, and it was almost like a whole decade of Mrs. Thatcher. And when she left, when she stopped being in office, I couldn't quite believe it. So I think this kind of fury can come about in the world of politics, and I think it's here now very much in terms of when people are tearing down statues and they're trying to they're furious about violence against black people, and they want to, in a way, I think the Furies represent that kind of, you just want something to stop, you just want something to go away quickly, it's like a principle of sort of like just reactivity, just reacting to the situation. This shouldn't be happening, why is this happening? That sort of thing. So in this article, the worship of guilt, the Furies and justice, it says, the Furies are older even than the Olympians, and are the direct results of the commingling of two primeval forces, Uranus, the heavens, and Gaia, the earth. They're also the result of a crime committed by a son against his father. For many years, the Furies are considered avengers of violations of the natural order. If a man killed his parents, for example, he could expect to answer to the Furies. By all accounts, the Furies were visually terrifying. They had the bodies and faces of twisted old women with writhing snakes for hair, runny eyes, and tattered black clothing. They punished their victims with a wild, paralytic song that aroused intense feelings of guilt and remorse. Essentially, the Furies drove criminals mad by exposing them to their own guilt and fear. So, let's move on to the story then. So the story in the Oresteia is that so Greece, Greece is at war with Troy, Trojan War, and so King Agamemnon of Greece. What happens is his fleet has been stranded by the wind, and famine has set in among his troops, and so he has to appease Artemis, the goddess Artemis, that's the twin sister of Apollo, by sacrificing his daughter Iphigenia. So you often get things like this in Greek myth, gods asking parents to sacrifice their children or whatever it is, so what how can we make sense of this sort of thing? Well, I think the whole Greek mythology, in a way, it sort of took the place of what today we would call like psychoanalysis. In a way, kind of the stories like just represent kind of some just basic truths about human existence, and symbolize that sort of thing. So it might be that sacrificing your daughter is meaning something like, you've got to make the personal sacrifices in some way if this is going to happen, So in a way, it's not to be taken literally. But the fact that these figures are actual personalities, in a way, it encourages you to actually feel the feelings around that, So so back in Argos on the Greek mainland, King Agamemnon's wife, Queen Clytemnestra, is at home. So the Trojan War went on for like 10 years, and then finally the Greeks won, and then Agamemnon sailed home, but the Queen has been having an affair with somebody called Aeschylus, behind his back. So there's a history here. So the King Agamemnon belongs to the house of Atreus. So his father's was Atreus, and so his father had a quarrel with Aeschylus' father, Thyestes, and again, it's more like gruesome Greek mythology. So Atreus kills Aeschylus' two brothers and has them cooked and served as a banquet for Thyestes. And when Thyestes discovers this after eating his sons. He puts a curse on Atreus's lineage. May it be shattered and split. So there's a similar story in Shakespeare, Titus Andronicus, where it's set in Rome, but it's like the father ends up eating his sons. So here's a medieval illumination of that story. This you can see in the bowl here. There's a couple of legs. Yeah. So what so basically, there's this kind of rivalry between these two, Greek houses, and a lot of horrible stuff has gone on between them. So anyway, so the king comes back from the war, and he's not been there very long, and he's having a bath, and his wife throws a net over him and stabs him. And then, Clytemnestra and Aegisthus, then, rule Argos. And her son, Orestes, is banished, and the daughter, Electra, lives as a slave. So Orestes finds out about the death of his father, and he prays to Zeus and Apollo through his oracle. So, that's probably the oracle at Delphi. And he prays to Zeus. No, then Apollo, through his oracle, tells him to avenge his father, which he does. So Orestes kills his mother. And after that, the Furies come after him. So what Orestes does is he flees to Apollo's temple. And the Furies have been kind of chasing him and like whipping him, and so this priestess goes into the shrine. This is in Apollo's temple. She says, "This isn't a play," and she staggers out again with shrieks. A horrible vision. No, it wasn't a vision. I can hardly stand. Too much for an old woman. I'm weaker than a baby. I went in. The inner shrine is hung with the wreaths of supplicants. On the holiest of stones, a strange man is sitting, a man dipped in blood, his whole body varnished with blood, as he grips a sword also bloody, as though his grip had locked on the hilt and he could not relax it. His eyes stare as if he could not blink or dare not blink, and yet he knows where he is. Fresh olive leaves of white new wool twisted among them are bound around his head, acknowledging Apollo. His appearance is terrifying, but worse, around him, I cannot describe it, around him on the stone benches, strange sleeping creatures. I would call them women, but they are not women. Gorgon-faced, yet not gorgons, black like the rags of soot that hang in a chimney, like bats, but wingless. Each of their faces a mess of weeping ulcers. The eyes, the mouth, ulcers. Their bodies exhale a stench like maggoty corpses. Their cloaks are saturated and stained with their own putrescence that oozes from them into the stones. Who are they? What are they? Some other kind, inhuman, monsters from a different world to be cursed by gods and men. Apollo is powerful, and this is his temple. All human pollutions await his cleansing touch. Priest, prophet, healer, I leave this stranger to him. So, his Orestes is in Apollo's temple, and he's surrounded. This description of the Furies, it's amazing. It's terrifying. He's just been terrified by being, chased by them and whipped by them and everything. So what happens next is that Apollo enters, and he urges Orestes to flee to Athens and plead with Athene. And he says, there you shall be judged by men I have appointed, and there, inspiring the tongue, I will free you. So yeah, he's saying, go to Athens, go see Athene. So Athene is associated with wisdom, and in a way, that she's got that spear. It's a little bit like the Buddhist deity Manjushri, who's associated with wisdom. He's got a flaming sword, So the idea is that with wisdom and things like swords and spears, it's like you're cutting through confusion, or it's not like you're not like you're killing anybody. It's more like you're separating things out, so that this is worth going with and this isn't worth going with, So Athene, in a way, is often represented in kind of above on the roof of the Austrian Parliament. It's like a symbol of kind of order and good judgment or something like that. Wisdom. It's a wisdom symbol. So Apollo, in a way, is just kind of like associated with more like prophecy and awareness and this sort of thing. And he's sort of it's like he's saying, what you need more than just me. You need more than just awareness and kind of uprightness and that sort of thing. You need to have some wisdom here to deal with this situation. So in the play, what happens next is that the Queen Clytemnestra, her ghost comes and wakes up the Furies, and then Apollo gets into an argument with the Furies, and the argument is about the murder of kin, so that the Furies are furious because the Orestes has murdered his mother. So it's like they're interested in like blood links and blood ties and that sort of thing. But Apollo's interested in the principle of like what a ruler has been murdered, So in a way, it's like what he's interested in is like order. So the problem of like if you have everybody just taking revenge on everybody else and an eye for an eye, that just order, social order just breaks down, But the Furies are not convinced by what Apollo says, and he says, "Do your worst." So, Orestes flees to the temple of Athene, and so in the play, you've got the Furies again. So now he is here. Where is he? He has squeezed himself into some cranny like a bat. He is here somewhere. The reek of his fear is thick in the air. Look there, that's him, the matricide. Block the door, close the trap. Don't let him get away. Once again he's found a refuge from the taste of our whips, this time clinging to the statue of a goddess and begging for a justice kinder than these lashes that slice at his heart and flay his spirit. So I think it's really interesting that, it's like this sense of when somebody's being pursued by Furies, or people who are kind of in that mode. This is what it's like. It's like it's like this person's spirit is being flayed. So it's like, it's not as if that those people are really taking that person on board as a human being. They're just looking to punish them. There is no hope for Orestes. His mother's blood, with the voice of earth, convicts him from the earth. So it's like the evidence of, it's like you can't get away from the fact that he's spilt his mother's blood, and this is the evidence that they got a sort of. He can never compel it to go back into her body. Now you shall pay us, Orestes, for the blood of your mother with your own, which was hers. So Athene appears next and asks, what's going on. So the Furies give their story, and Orestes gives his own version of what happened. So in the play now, Athene speaks and says, "This case is too deep for a man, nor should I let the law like an axe fall mechanically on a murderer." So she's what's she saying there? She's saying it's not kind of like automatic that because somebody has committed a murder that they that they are killed themselves. She says, especially since you came to my temple as a supplicant, fully cleansed of your crime. But your accusers have to be heard. And if their case fails, what happens to their anger? So if I sort of decide that in your favor, what's going to happen with them? They're not going to be satisfied by that. So that anger whirls up into the air. It blackens heaven. It falls like a plague on Athens. Falls as a curse on Athens. So Yeah, it's all this kind of fury going on in politics in America, particularly. Is a bit like this. It's like this anger, and it's falling on America. It's falling on the institutions, and a little bit kind of indiscriminately. So Athene says, how am I to deal with the dilemma? And then this is the key kind of the solution that she comes up with, which is the origin of the court of justice. So she says, let me select a jury of the wisest among the citizens of this city. Let them be the first of a permanent court, passing judgment on murder. They shall be sworn in to integrity and truth. They shall have the full use of my wisdom. So the court meets. So the court meets, and Apollo is there, and he speaks as Zeus's representative, and he mentions the divine right of kings. So again, he's protecting the idea of like the social order as represented by kingship. And then Athene speaks to the jury as a judge would, and they vote. The vote is even, but Athene has the casting vote, and she votes to acquit Orestes. And obviously the Furies are angry at this, So in the notes it says Athene votes for the father's right, because it was the father that was killed. She never had a mother. She was born from Zeus's head as a warrior virgin. Anyway. So what happens next is, Athene has to sort of try and kind of placate the Furies and stop them just raining their destruction down onto Athens, because they've not been satisfied. And you have this toing and froing in the play, which is like between the Furies and Athene. She invites them to let their rage pass into understanding. So in a way, this is like representing like civilization, as into the coloured clouds of a sunset. Promising a fair tomorrow. Do not let it fall as a rain of sterility and anguish on Attica. Accept this verdict, and here in Athens, the envied city, you shall have a permanent home. You shall sit on thrones of dignity in a sacred cavern and receive tributes of gratitude and honour forever from all our people. So what Athene does is she offers the Furies a dignified place, within sort of Athenian society. To create a kind of like sacred cavern for them to live in. But the Furies reply. They say, our old laws are crushed under the new. Our justice is buried like the ashes of Troy. The voice of the blood. This is like this, voice of like revenge. Instinctual. Righteous indignation, that sort of thing. The voice of the blood that you have banished cries from the stones, but that buried voice shall rise like a miasma and fall on this land as a madness, as a contagion. I shall not weep when the screams of all living creatures goes up from Attica. So if you try and sort of deny a voice, you know, so I'm just thinking in terms of you know, like Donald Trump not being able to tweet anymore, you know, because Twitter's sort of banned his account, you know. I think there's a real danger in that, because like you're not allowed, if you try and stop a voice, it's almost like the emotion just builds up more and more, and it's like the conviction builds up more and more that I'm being shut, you know, I'm being kind of silenced here, you know, and you get angry at that. I mean, I had, you know, I did a session on slightly mentioning the NHS and vaccine stuff around vaccines, and it was just a reasoned session, you know. But I had a thing pop up from Facebook saying, "Are you sure you want to say this?" You know, so it's a bit like a kind of censorship thing that was coming in. They had no idea who I was, but this algorithm comes up and says, "Are you sure about this?" You know, so that sort of thing, you know, like being compelled to, if it's about compelled speech, being compelled to speak in a particular way, that it's all gonna cause hell, that, because people get so furious when you make them, when you limit their freedom, you know, when you shut them up or you censor them, you know. Anyway, so Athene replies again. She says, "You have not been crushed or insulted. Your voice has not been buried. There is no reason your deathless fury should punish this land. You call for justice, but God speaks through me. Only I, Pallas Athene, possess the key that unlocks the thunderbolt of Zeus. But the time of brute force is past. The day of reasoned persuasion with its long vision, with its mercy, its forgiveness has arrived, you know." So this is like a transition from the old way of doing things, you know, an eye for an eye, to something else, which has a long vision to it, reason, persuasion, this sort of thing. Yeah, she goes on. "The word hurled in anger shall be caught in a net of gentle words." That's amazing, isn't it? The word hurled in anger shall be caught in a net of gentle words, words of quiet strength. So the Buddhist deity Manjughosha, who was also associated with wisdom as a flaming sword, his name means the gentle voiced one. So it's like wisdom is associated with this, with a kind of gentleness of expression. "The angry mouth shall be given a full hearing." I understand your fury, but the vendetta cannot end. The bloody weapon cannot be set aside till all understand it. Till all understand it. So everyone needs to understand why you're angry, you know. "You will thank me for this when the harvest of Attica lays its first fruits on your altar, when marriage and childbirth, the two sacraments by which societies perpetuate their people and their bonds to each other, make their sacrifices at your shrine." So what Athene does is she she gives the in a way, the thing that the Furies are valuing, which is this thing of blood ties, natural allegiances, through family and this sort of thing. She kind of creates. She makes them like the goddesses associated with those sorts of things, and says, "Well, I'm going to get people to honor you as the protectors of marriage and childbirth and everything that's to do with nature and the elements and the weather." So it's like, she's kind of giving them a place within society. She's honoring their values, really, and saying it's not all about it's not all about the social order. In a way, Apollo kind of represents like this social order, and it's not all about social order. It's like the kind of the upwelling frustrations, that they're within society, kind of need to be honored as well, So I just kind of think about things like the South Park, thing where they do, they took my job, that sort of thing. Well, it's not a joke having your job taken, like if all the kind of people in America who've had the Trump supporters who maybe aren't being, their needs have not really been kind of met that much, So it's like there's going to be fury there if that happens. So it's like something in the wise perspective, all of that needs to be honored, all of those feelings need to be kind of honored. So it carries on this to and fro, between Athene and the Furies, and in the end, what happens is the Furies get transformed into what are called the Eumenides, the kindly ones. So it's like that. In the end, they do like accept that role. They're given. At first, they say, "Oh, you want to shut us away under the earth in some cave or something like that," and you're just trying to get rid of us, aren't you? But I think in the end, they become convinced that they are being honoured and that they are being given their proper place, within society and everything. So in the end, so Athene says, justice itself is made greater here because it is hospitable to your truth. So it's like justice is greater when it kind of acknowledges the kind of those sort of passions and urges that people have, and takes those into account, rather than just punishes them because they seem like uncivilized in a way, So it has to take everything into account, take all the feelings into account. So everybody in the end understands. This is what Athene said. Everybody understands what the situation is, so everyone then becomes calm, So in the end, Athene says, the Furies who've become the kindly ones, been talked around by Athene. Athene says, "I rejoice to hear your changed voices, your terrifying voices becoming kindly, and I bless the sacred power of persuasion that makes calm the storm in the body." So anyway, like the court is like that, isn't it? You've got the lawyers are kind of, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to use this sacred power of persuasion, so you have to convince the jury that obviously this all gets kind of depends, this all can get kind of corrupted if it sort of becomes, if the spirit of it is lost, and becomes legalistic and money driven. Well, but the principle is that the sacred power of persuasion makes calm the storm in the body. The presence of God in persuasion. So so the presence of proper spirit in persuasion, a kind of ethical spirit in persuasion, draws the poison fangs of evil, undoes the knotted mesh of brooding hatred. In the gentle combat of persuasion, good wins over good with goodness, and none lose. So finally, the Eumenides, the kindly ones, are led to their home. So Athene says, "We thank you. We thank you. Now out by torches we lead you to your home under the earth. Young women, the most beautiful, and children, the joyful, form our procession, brighter than the torches. And older women, robed in purple, go with us. Honor the friendly ones. Let the blazing procession go in. Lead our guests to their new home, where they shall administer great wealth, great good fortune to Attica. Daughters of timeless darkness, enter your subterranean home. You who knew what honor is and why honor is holy." So, yeah, they, it's their kind of sense of honor, really, that this is wrong. This needs to be addressed. So it's like, honoring that spirit is what's happening here. So, enter the fortress of understanding into the earth, the cavern timeless as the tomb, where sacrifices shall be offered up in religious awe. Terrible kindly ones, come to your rest in the flame of torches, and let the voice of every citizen with a shout of welcome be made holy. Pour out the wine, let the pine bough crack and blaze. That's the fire. Zeus, father of all, guards the city of Athens. So God and fate in a divine marriage. So God in the sense of ethical choice about what we do, and fate in the sense of, things that are kind of like predetermined, maybe kind of things that we don't have much choice over, brought together in a divine marriage. Maybe fate is like more about accepting difficulty we don't have control over. And all our people, made one in the flesh of all our people, and the voice of their shout is single and holy. So I think that it was really nice to just read that. the play itself, the poetry of the play itself, because it just captures so much there, And it's a bit sad, really, that I think Aeschylus. It's sad that I think only 7 of his plays survived, or something like that, out of maybe 30 or something like that. Anyway, it's good that this did survive. So anyway, I hope that you found that interesting, and I just wanted to. I think it's an important text, really, especially today in the kind of political climate that we're in. That it speaks to things like order versus chaos. It speaks to righteous indignation. It speaks to letting a common understanding, really. Athene says, all the people need to understand, what's happening here, and your voices all need to be heard. All voices need to be heard, and this is when we're going to have like a civilized, ordered, society which isn't centering anybody or kind of oppressing. When it's sort of ignoring injustice and stuff. So that's it for today. Thank you very much. Bye bye.